Matt, you've put yourself out. A lot of guys have been whacked for things like less than what you've put out. They've been killed. They've been taken out of action. So, and you know this when you go into it, don't you? You know that it's a big risk. Like Plato said, it's very, very hard to get the truth, and then very, very dangerous to publish it. What do you think?
Oh, well, that's a fact for sure. And in that frequency, I try not to get stuck there because that's where stuff like that can reside. I've actually wondered why I'm still walking, because I have done some amazing stuff thus far. And I really think it has a lot to do with just honoring maybe my karma or being a good person, or, I try not to think about it too much. I try to just let people see the lies as much as possible. And in this age of falsehoods, I like to call it, it becomes this amazing opportunity for people to cultivate their intuition. I mean, really, in this world of duality, so many lies, we get to see, well, this feels like a lie and this feels like truth. And in this cultivation of intuition, we can really harness our gut instinct and really see things with our heart and our gut and not get tricked so much with our minds. But yeah, people, doctors get whacked for talking about vaccines and all of that. Sometimes people have come to me and said, Matt, you're protected and what have you. I like to think that because I am fearless and I will go until I can't breathe another breath, because that's what the truth deserves. I try to practice what I preach, and I've been saying recently, especially recently, we have to honor the truth with integrity. You can't turn a blind eye to the truth if you know what's going on. It doesn't mean you have to, be me or be you and give it your all. You can just plant seeds and do with what you can with what you have where you're at. Because if everybody did that, we'd be in a much better situation.
Yep, for sure, you do your little bit. Guys like David Crowley from the documentary A Grey State, who was killed, and his family, they knew that as well, didn't they? I knew that. My mother warned me when I first started. I ended up doing 2 jail stints for my work. I had many attacks, Morgellons types, electroshocks. I still get them. I have spasms and convulsions at night when I go horizontal, and I start itching and burning all over the skin, and it's violent. I'm sure they've triangulated me, and I'm not saying it's just all due or direct energy weapons, but I've been tortured for 15 years since I started on this truth path, and especially since I started my YouTube channel, MrAstrotheology, in 2011. They really turned up the frequencies, and whatever it is, however it works, I think it's all connected. Parasites, heavy metals, AI, nanobots, together with 5G, together with chemtrails. It's all a symbiotic network of things working together to destroy human beings. Voice to skull sometimes make people look crazy when they go to the doctors. Itching the way I have causes doctors to look askance, and they just cannot deal with. They have no idea what I've got, so I don't bother anymore. And so it's all deliberate, folks. But Matt, I would really, really like you to thrash out what you've discovered in what they're putting in chemtrails and how they work and why they do it and who's behind it. I'm sure it's the military, but what are your insights there?
Oh, I could talk about all that for a lot, and I will for sure. There's the who, what, why, where, when, how, and everyone wants to be able to sink their teeth into all those factors before they can convey the message to their friend, family, and peers, because they don't want to sound like a bunch of lunatics. But back to the frequency of fear and being targeted and what have you, one of my idols is Dr. Sebi, S-E-B-I, And there's a famous quote from his mom. He was curing people with just diet. They threw him in jail. They tried to throw his name and walk his name through the mud or whatever, muddy his name, and try to say he was practicing medicine without licensing and whatnot. And he went through so much jail time and court cases. And his mom said after he cured 11 or 12 people of full-blown AIDS, she said, quote, "They gonna get ya." And he said, "Mama, I don't care." And now his name is embedded in my head, and I'll carry it forward forever. And I think a lot of people know his name because he didn't stop, right? And he showed people an alkaline diet and how important pH is, and so much about minerals and mineralization. He's an amazing person to look up to. And did he give in to fear? No, he did not. And in terms of you being targeted and what have you, not to plug my new clothing line, but we got to get you some gear. Give me your address off the air. I'll send you what I have so far. I've got sparrow hats and even blankets and what have you, but I know all about it, brother. So I really believe in the power of silver as the lining for clothing to protect. We can talk about that later. But for the chemtrails, well, it's a big agenda with so many players all at once. And that's what's staggering. And really, you have to become an expert if you really want to dig in and be able to tell everyone everything. But it does not take an expert to look at the sky and see the trends and to see big fluffy clouds or no clouds at all. And then all of a sudden you see all this air traffic. There's zigzag in the skies and maybe on the edge of a weather pattern or what have you. People can start to wake up just by looking up, especially looking up at the days where there's nothing going on. Get out of fear and get into the opposite of fear, which is hope, and see that there's beautiful days, and then all of a sudden there's planes zigzagging in your sky, right? This irregular pattern of appearance can start to give people that aha moment where they start to really see what's going on. But for the who's doing it? There's the CARE program, Charged Aerosol Release Experiment, and that's ongoing, funded through NASA. We all know NASA is a bunch of liars, right? But NASA has a budget of $52 million a day, and they have a program with drones and planes spraying aluminum, barium, strontium, hidden in plain sight. These programs are funded and public, and they talk about what we use the atmosphere as a laboratory. That's a NASA quote. But that's not the only program. Right? There's the stratospheric aerosol injections, SAI, out of the CIA. There's solar radiation management, SRM, and you can look up Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, SRMGI, or srmgi.gov, where there's a program of elitists who claim they have exclusive rights to saving the planet through geoengineering that they can't answer to anyone because they're in charge of the world. And they dictate who gets how much solar radiation, which is sunlight. So they manage the solar radiation intake of our planet under the guise of saving us from global warming, which if you get down that rabbit hole, it's actually BS in and of itself. But that's a whole other show. So there's the SRMGI program. There's also other programs all at once for climate remediation and what have you, and especially there's the Tropospheric Aerosol Program from the Department of Energy, TAP. And if you really want to get involved and researched and educated on chemtrails, you start with this document that came out right before 9/11 in 2001, and it's called the Tropospheric Aerosol Program, Department of Energy PDF, TAP DOE PDF. You could just Google that with spaces, TAP space DOE space PDF, and then you've got this amazing 100-page document hidden in plain sight, all of it. It even discloses that contrails are a sham, and these are precursor gases mixing with the chemtrails. Some of us will say, oh, look, that short line, that's a contrail, and that long line is a chemtrail. Not anymore, okay? That has not been the case for quite some time. We've got high bypass turbofan jet engines. They use fans, not superheated air, to make airplanes go. And the air coming out is not hot enough to make a condensation trail at all. So the short ones, the medium ones, the long ones, if you really look at the sky, they're mixing different chemicals. One of them might be negatively charged radioactive strontium, and another one could be positively charged radioactive aluminum or barium, and then the two mix together, causing chemical reactions. When you start to see, you mentioned the big program, how it's all connected, right? One perfect example I like to bring up, not to get off on a tangent in another direction, but it's actually really important, is the fact that fluoride and aluminum are so intricately connected. Okay, we've got aluminum in vaccines, aluminum in the geoengineering chemtrails agenda, aluminum in our deodorant and our sunscreen, and then fluoride in our water and our toothpaste and all this stuff. Well, fluoride comes from making aluminum. A byproduct of creating aluminum in Alcoa manufacturing processes is the toxic waste of fluoride. So they figured a way to put it in our drinking supply, right? Well, when the two mix together, there's a chemical reaction, and that's going down in your brain, causing dementia, causing Alzheimer's. And fluoride happens to be able to pass the blood-brain barrier with ease, but not aluminum. But it'll bond to the aluminum, escort it past the blood-brain barrier, and then you've got all this mixing of chemicals with chemical reactions going on in your brain. Okay, so the tropospheric aerosol program, we'll get back to that with the Department of Energy. This is the big who, and it can answer the why, and it can answer a lot of questions. But just before 9/11, the biggest distraction up until this virus, the biggest distraction of our time before right now what we're going through, the biggest distraction ever was about to happen. So they launched the Department of Energy. And yeah, that is the boogeyman, even though it's been normalized through media recently on Stranger Things and whatnot. But yes, the Department of Energy is in on it. And why would they do that? Why would dirty oil, dirty coal, dirty energy figure out a way to control our sunlight and block out our sun? Well, maybe they didn't want solar power to proliferate. Maybe they wanted to control the weather and be really evil, bastards. Everyone wants to know the why, but first you have to put your feet in the shoes of a socio-psychopath and then predict the future, which is basically why is control, So then the what is aluminum, barium, strontium, also nanoparticulates and viruses and all this other stuff, And then the who is really this Department of Energy, if you really want to get down to it. I mean, it's so many programs all at once, but the Department of Energy, this document, they grid different chemicals and lines over the city of Nashville, Tennessee in this 2001 document. They talk all about it. They call contrails precursor gases and eloquently describe their budget for that year, spending $5 million in this appendix in the back of this document. They spend $5 million on risk aversion and detection something. Basically, it's like not getting caught. They drop $5 million just that year. And it's extrapolated every single year, this budget. So it's like if people ask me who, it's the Department of Energy, but that's just a little sliver of it all because there's so many ongoing. We've got Harvard and Bill Gates and David Keith and all these elitists working in conjunction through all these different programs to dictate who gets rain, who gets sunlight, and who proliferates in this establishment of a new world order. But if they can dictate who gets sunlight and who does not, they control the world. And then you've got aluminum-resistant genetic seeds that are being put out and aluminum-resistant bumblebees for pollination that's eloquently described by Terry Lawton out of Ireland in my film Frankenskies. Check it out, frankenskiesthemovie.com. You can look on YouTube, but I get censored so bad. But frankenskiesthemovie.com is a direct shot to the Vimeo link for Frankenskies. And if you want a DVD, I'm happy to send out DVDs and flyers. I like to do things in the real world, have screenings, DVDs out there and flyers and what have you. But yeah, that's my short long on the who, what, why, where, when, ongoing, why. I mean, I can answer all these questions, but there's some of them are really intricate and involved, and people want to be able to take the information and pass it to their peers. But then it's so confusing, just like vaccine science and other things, that then the peers are like, well, are you a weatherman, expert meteorologist, or an electrical engineer now when it comes to 5G and all this? It's like I'm about as well researched as one of those, and I can explain it better and I know more of the truth than they do, right? But at the end of the day, we have to know how to see things for ourselves and teach ourselves how to think and not look up to some hero to tell us how to think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, have control of your own mind, folks. That's it. That's what Matt's teaching. You've got your mind. Use it. Now, that's intelligence, and it's the only way you will sharpen your mind. It's the only way you will protect your mind from influences that are not in your favour. And there are plenty of those out there. We have a war, spiritual war, as it says in Ephesians in Scripture. I love to quote the Bible because it's got the greatest literary truth. It's not literal, but it's the greatest literary truth. We have a war against the evil machinations in the spirit realms or the other dimensions of this world, folks. And it's on, and we're going to win it because we stand for the truth, and the truth is the main structural edifice which creation can exist under. Everything is truth. There are people out there who will tell you there is no truth. Well, whatever you do not listen to them because they're telling you that they're liars. They don't understand that truth stands on its own merits, and truth is God. There's only truth. That's my expression. That's my comeback to them. There is only truth. And the way you did present that documentary, Matt, it's just absolutely wonderful. It's for beginners and oldies alike. I've posted it on my timeline, folks. Go to my timeline on Facebook and you will see Matt's bio and blurb there, and then the film on YouTube, Frankenskies. And I really recommend you watch it and share it and share it and share it and share it, because we are going to win this, and this is how we're going to win it, by exposing them. So how do you think all of this morphed into what's going on now on the streets, where they're trying to lock down countries and use a virus, so-called, to limit people's actions like gathering and going out in public? Everything's going to be monitored, so they think, and that's what they want to bring in. What do you think there, Matt?
I've got amazing theories on it, and we can only speculate, right, because we're in the midst of it, and I'm right in the midst of it where I'm at, just outside of San Francisco in Northern California. And back to the Frankenskies, even though Frankenskies came out in 2017, it's a documentary that shows and exposes the chronological timeline from 1922 to 2017 when the film was released. It's still prevalent and relevant and really important, and it's still building momentum. I just got Spanish subtitles. There's a version of it with Spanish subtitles. We just had a successful screening in Tamworth, Australia. There's been a lot of screenings in person that people are just taking the ball, and I'm not even there, and they're hosting it, and I can get Skyped in. I'll do whatever I can to help, but it's not about me. I'm not even like there voiceovering the movie. I'm in it a little bit in the end, but the movie's not about me. It's about the truth. So it's really important that it's honored and that we just keep pushing it forward, because it's amazing what can happen when people really wake up. And when you mentioned good and evil, I felt some amazing energy, and I really do firmly believe that it is a battle of good and evil. And if you, as a listener, activist person out there, air-breathing, red-blooded mammal, human being, if the listener can really, really deeply recognize that it is an ongoing battle of good and evil, and that's where we live, and that's what's going on here, then a lot of things start to become more understandable. Because right now we are left to just guess what's going on. And for me, I've always felt that 2020 was going to be a year. You know a lot more about astrology than me. I feel a lot more than I research, but I do see the progression of things and see how things switch up when we go into these new ages. And when the full moon comes out, they show up and chemtrail the crap out of it. There's energy in setting sunlight. There's energy in setting and the rising and setting moon, and there's a lot of energy in the planets and the stars as they align and what have you. I feel like 2020 was on our original. So this is just my ideas. I like to think and theorize on these things. So I love for everyone else to think for themselves as well. But I get really spiritual with it. I get really, really spiritual with it. And because I firmly believe it's a battle of good and evil, and that truth is good, truth is one of the highest vibrations we have in this realm, in my opinion. And I firmly believe that 2020, on our original timeline, that there is this beginning of a elevation of consciousness that becomes intensified. We've been on this path So here's the deal, in my opinion. Humans embody here in physicality so that we can shed karma and make our spirits higher vibration or whatever. I don't really know everything, but I do believe that incarnation on earth in physicality, in physical form, is something about living through our karma and physicality unbeknownst to ourselves. And then, if we have to reincarnate or whatever, maybe that's real or not. But either way, we refine our spirit until finally we all have this higher vibratory thing together. Call it an ascension or an elevation of consciousness or whatever. And in that space, whoever these evil assholes are, they lose control, right? They lose control. Maybe they feed on our fear. I have no idea, but there's evil here, and they lose control when we firmly come into our full powers of manifestation, of full intuition, of full heart openings, and full spiritual awareness, right? And that age is approaching rapidly on our original timeline, and I firmly believe that whoever's fucking behind all this stuff, sorry, I'll keep the cursing to a minimum, whoever's behind this is in the know. They're in the know of our potential future, What are they, time-traveling aliens? I have no idea. Do they look into a crystal ball? Do they have witches on their side? Or do they have just intuition? Or are they just trying to hijack our timeline because they know about the astrology? Either way, things were about to pick up, right? And then all of a sudden, come 2020, we assassinate the vice president of Iran, essentially. Then Kobe dies, which I have my suspicions. And then all of a sudden, I thought things were going to feel good, and boom, this thing got so wild, this virus thing. And it's the control of the mechanisms through the television, through the smartphones, the smart devices, through the frequency control that's around all of us now. Okay, we've got smart meters and cell towers and small cell towers and smartphones and all these frequency emitters. Like that movie, They Live, that movie is on point right now when you really think about it, because everybody's stuck in this frequency of fear. I go down the street to my grocery store. The thing is empty because we went into lockdown last night. Yesterday, everyone's phones beeped, and it said, I'm now in Sonoma County, which is it's wine country. It's just north of San Francisco, right? I move around a lot, and this is where I am right now. And we got put into lockdown last night, 12 midnight. We have to stay in our homes for 3 weeks, okay? And it said only essential travel, and, what does that even mean? But everybody's locked into a frequency of fear now, all right? And if you start to really learn about frequency and really learn about how we are beings of frequency, and when things are going really good for us and we really start to manifest and believe in our spirituality and hone in on that thing, there is some true power, and we are unstoppable. And maybe there's a heart opening that can be triggered and can be systemic and whatnot. And maybe that's what the powers that be want to stem by keeping us 6 feet apart and creating this social distancing and telling the whole world they're on lockdown, essentially. This disrupts the economy. I mean, they're going to bust the dollar. I've got a master's in business administration with a focus in strategic sustainability. I thought I was going to be an economics PhD, right? I spent a lot of my life in the stock market and the mortgage industry and whatever before I got into my spiritual side. Like in my 20s, I was really into money. I was kind of a gambling idiot, so I never really made too much, but I learned a lot about a lot. And I can see the writing on the wall right now, okay? The media is in such a frenzy. They've got people fighting over hand sanitizer, fighting over toilet paper, and if the media wanted to say there was a run on the banks, there would be a run on the banks and the U.S. dollar would crash and we'd go into the deepest depression we've ever seen. Okay, it's unreal, the control that they have right now. But they're baby stepping it towards this metaphor of a frog in boiling water. For those that haven't heard it, you drop a frog in boiling water, they jump right out. You put a frog in water, you slowly turn it up, and the water will slowly boil, and the frog will just sit there and die. And that's what's happening to the human race right now. We are programmed through our media, through our instant gratification and our smart devices and all this stuff. We're programmed to think that the apocalypse is going to look like an alien invasion or a martial law gun grab or whatever, but it's not going to happen overnight. Evidently, it looks like that there's this slow, incremental change up in the way that we live our everyday life, okay? Amazon will now be delivering stuff to your door with drones in like a year because people are so freaked out about being next to each other. People are distancing themselves 6 feet now. There's a social distancing regulation that I guess they'll start to enforce with I don't even know what. But the direction that we're going is a hijacking of what I thought was a spiritual timeline. And although I know it's a spiritual timeline because you can't disrupt God's plan, who do you think you are, right? But maybe it gets a little dark for people to see the dark, to see that there's light, because that, in a microcosm, that was my life, right? When I started to realize there was dark, I started to know that there was definitely light as well, that there's dark, there's light, there's duality, there's good, there's bad, there's evil, there's you know, and what side am I on? I'm not evil. Right? So I chose the side, or I was already on the side of truth, on higher vibration, and I went with it, you know, and I really honored it with integrity once I realized there was that firm duality, because I wasn't going to give it the benefit of the doubt the more that I saw and learned and was shown when I asked. So long story short, I think it's a timeline hijack, brother. But I mean, on a really lighter note, I think it's control. I think if you could bust the stock market like we've just witnessed, you can make so much money. And at the end of it all, definitely people will vote for Trump. If I am a gambling man, and I would say there's a 99.9% chance that Trump now definitely wins the election because people are so stuck in fear they wouldn't vote him out right now. It's so crazy. But it's slippery slope. How far do they want to take it? I don't know. If they want to mandate that everyone in North America gets this testing kit and gets tested, then every brainwashed person out there, which is a lot of people right now staring at their TVs right now because they have nothing else to do. The sporting events are canceled. They can't go outside. They can't mingle or gather. The bars all got closed. In California a couple days ago, maybe, I want to say Monday. It's every day, brother, things have just shifted in a radical direction. About 3 days ago, they said, if you're over 65, you have to stay in your house. And then they said all bars are closed. And then they said no gatherings of over 100 people. Then they said no gatherings of over 50 people the next day. And then the next day they said no gatherings of over 10 people. And then now we're on lockdown, which involves now over 10 million people in California, and it's sure to grow, right? So and lockdown is like a prison term, you know. These are things, these words that are coming into the consciousness that I'm hearing 5-year-olds use, like social distancing and kill rate. The kill rate of the coronavirus, which the coronavirus, the word means common cold. Right? You're in Mexico. I'm sure a lot of people down there are just like, coronavirus, just wash your hands, man. Like, look at a bottle of Lysol on the back of it from even a year ago. The first thing it says that Lysol kills is human coronavirus, right? So they're spinning it out of control, hidden in plain sight. And what's the final agenda? It's basically how far do they want to push it? Do they want to make everyone have to get testing kits? And then are they going to mandate a vaccine to push this 2020 ID? Because it looks to me like when I was flying around, I like to travel like you do because I love to go to farmers markets where I've never been and pass out like 1,000 chemtrail flyers. It just makes me, it's the only thing that makes me happy, brother, really. So getting out there in the world, I saw this progression, right? And now all of a sudden I've been told that I can't travel at the end of the year. Come October, I can't travel with this new 2020 ID. And that ID will have a biometric fingerprint thing on it, and it will say whether or not I've been up to speed on my vaccines. So then what I like to do, because I meditate on this, bro, and I really get deep in it, and I hate to say you got to get a little dark to really hypothesize because you put yourself in the shoes of total evil scumbags. So if I look at it from their perspective and I wanted to hijack this timeline, what I would do if I was them is make everyone get this 2020 ID, push in this AI tech with 5G, have basically on every street corner they're scanning the IDs that you have to carry around in your pocket, and the IDs say if you're up to speed on your vaccines. And so they'll force these vaccines on us that, you know, we definitely don't need, that are totally embedded with psycho stuff. Of course, we know about that. And then they push this whole new world where we're regulated by digital currency because they could easily just now bust the dollar because everyone's so in fear. But that one card will be associated with a new world currency, new world government, new world order. And I'm not trying to like make it happen through my manifestation capabilities. You know, I know a lot of people are on the edge of their seats and we're all thinking together and what have you. Let's all hope for the best, you know, but at the same time, I can't help but extrapolate that this could get really weird really quick, and this could be the beginning of a whole new world that we live in, you know, where these IDs are basically, and then eventually it's the mark of the beast, right? Then the IDs end up being a chip in our arm, and then the people that are infected go into these FEMA camps, and it gets really weird. I really pray it doesn't go that way, but as it stands now, I'm on lockdown. I'm not supposed to leave my house unless it's essential. Now, is anybody regulated it? No. Has anybody approached me and said, what are you doing? Where are you going? I'm going to give you a ticket for walking around. No. But it could very easily get to that point. The streets are dead. The grocery stores are empty. The stock market just crashed, right? And people are on the edge of their seats staring at their smart TV, being embedded with frequency. Like, I mean, literally they're being like shot with frequency out of their TV to manipulate their mind while the news is saying the same thing everywhere, all across the world. You know, it's unprecedented, and really we just have to wait and see how far these evil idiots want to push it. But it seems like that they'll likely push it to a point where we're mandated to take the test to see if we've got the common cold, and if we do have it, then maybe they'll put us in some quarantine / FEMA camp thing, or I don't know, man. It's getting really weird, but the fact of the matter is, so many people will be impacted by what's already happened thus far that this will result in a depression, not a recession, but a massive depression. Many people were going to lose their businesses, lose their jobs. Millions of kids are out of school, and parents are scrambling to figure out what even to do with the kids. People in university, brother, and then I'll pass the mic to you. I get on these little tangents. Just feel free to interrupt me anytime. People in university right now, all throughout the United States and even North America, you've paid to go to university, and even though it's indoctrination, whatever, we can talk about that, they've paid to be there, and they've paid to live in the dorms. That's their home, okay? They've all been told, go home, school's canceled for the whole year. So they're supposed to be living in these dorms, and they're just told to leave. So that's just one microcosm, but people that work in restaurants, we may actually go into a whole new world where servers and bartenders do not exist, and only things that are to go and delivered by drones and delivered by people and whatnot, and takeaway and takeout and whatnot is just the new norm because of this total fear-mongering that seemed to me like it was just the common cold going around. I mean, I can speculate on that too. You know, there's a lot of people saying that 5G is weaponized, engineered, whatever. That it's coming. It could be coming from 5G or whatever, the coronavirus. But at the end of the day, the media has blown it out of such proportion that you control the media, you control the minds, you control the outcome of the situation. Thank you.
Wonderful. And by the way, I love rants when they're so well articulated and they've got so much good information and charged with a lot of passion and intelligence. Thank you, brother. I'm like that too. I'm the sort of interviewer that just lets people go. I could have jumped in a million times there, but you're on a roll. One of the places where I wanted to jump in was where you spoke about Dr. Sebi. I put millions of people onto him in the last decade. I used to put him up all the time, and he was aware of me. We were supposed to do a show together at one stage, but because I just put everyone onto him, his diet, everything he stood for, the way, his passion, the way he did things like me. He was a Sagittarian, very lively and happy, happy-go-lucky type guy, but that's how I do things. I'm happy-go-lucky, very Jupiterian, and even though I was warned by my mother as he was by his mother, and I ended up in jail twice, he didn't come out of jail because they snuffed him out, folks, believe you me. And even the guy who was going to make a documentary just 2 years ago, he was killed because he just set out to make a documentary about Dr. Sebi. That's how important his work is. Another place I wanted to jump in was about the coronavirus. Corona is crown, folks. Make no mistake about it. Crown is Kronos, is Saturn, is Satan. Those who work for the crown, the bar, they are foreigners. They have no land. They are in admiralty. And they are stealing your rights away from you. It's all coming from the Vatican, London and DC infrastructure of control of the world. So, and of course, Kronos is the guy who knocks on the door, the Grim Reaper, the night before he takes you away, and then your body ends up being examined by a coroner. You see, because Kronos took you into that room where the doctor is now the coroner, and that's what they're trying to tell you. It's all about two things: the coroner, death, and he who owns the title of the crown, Satan, the god of this world, and that it is the Grim Reaper, and that he is the crown, and it's a satanic agenda. And then the other place I wanted to jump in was I was living in just a town called Philo in north of San Francisco, where you are, all the wine area. And I was in Boonville and Philo. I'm sure you know the place.
I do. I'm really familiar with it all. And back to really quick, I just want to say, when you really start to cultivate your intuition and feel your gut, you know, some people call it street smarts, but I really feel like we're losing street smarts being glued to our phones, you know? We don't get out in the real world. We don't cultivate that intuition, so we're slowly losing that. But if you watch Dr. Sebi's presentations and listen to him, he's so real. Being so grounded, down to earth, and real like that as an activist is so important, because really when you're on that frequency, you can't deny their intentions. You know, these are real human beings just trying to do good. And it was just last year that the rapper Nipsey Hussle died just 1 year ago, and he was about to drop that documentary about Dr. Sebi. And the thing about Dr. Sebi's work, and I think this is the reason why he died and why they would kill Nipsey Hussle for making the documentary and what have you, is because it's so simple. And when things are so simple, they can be so easily adopted, and you can learn so much through simplicity. It's the confusion and making it complex that makes it not easily adapted, but it's so easily spread like wildfire, Sebi's work, because it's the simplicity of it and how real and logical it really is. And the wordplay on everything, I love that you get into that. And I just want to give you back the microphone, but I could go on and on about the Rastafarians and how even our English language has been hijacked, and even homonyms and all these different things. But the deeper meaning hidden in plain sight with the corona, it's really real. And when there's a satanic agenda at play, I think it has to do with karmic law of some sort, you know, where they tell us right to our faces, but it's hidden in plain sight. It's such a twisted, evil agenda, and so frustrating for the activists that really see right through it, because it's right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they see the theatre, so others don't. Their mindset is not able to, I suppose, raise as high to get the perspective that we have. They see the trees, they don't see the forest. So for us, we're able to see the forest and the bigger picture. It's due to, I guess, two things, like I mentioned before: the intelligence of the mind and the heart being willing to stand for truth. So I'm glad that I chose my path of truth-telling, and I'll do it time and time again. You know, there's no way I will live any other way. I can't sit on the beach drinking pina coladas while little babies are starving due to politicians and all of and babies are being killed with vaccines and sprayed with chemtrails and fluoridated, etc. I just can't do that. It's just hypocritical. I cannot enjoy my life. I just can't, because everyone else is not. So as within, so without, we what we feel, what's going on outside, we will feel inside. Unless you detach yourself and be calloused and cold and cruel to the point where you just shut your ears and your eyes and just think that as long as you've got, your sandwiches and a bit of food and drink and a bed to sleep at night, despite all the people losing their houses and on the streets, you're okay. Well, that will go bad for you. Whoever you are that is like that. I'm sure none of the listeners on this show are like that at all. Otherwise they wouldn't be here, because they know I'm a truther of the true kind, and I'm not here to tickle anyone's ears or impress them with my language or my knowledge, because I'm just as ignorant as most people. All I can do is say that I'm a researcher that knows a lot, and I'm sharing that. And so that's all I do, and that's what I do. And so people here on this show know that. But anyone else who might be listening that for the first time or what have you, and you have succumbed to that attitude, you need to snap out of it. You are actually contributing to the problem, and you're not doing anything to help. Each individual effort is multiplicative, like the fascia in a sticks in a fascia. The more sticks you add, their strength grows multiplicatively, not additively. So 3 sticks don't have 3 times as much strength as 1 stick does. It's more than that. It's probably 4 or 5. So this is how it works. As we grow our community of truth tellers, then a resistance comes along that the lies cannot penetrate, because light expels darkness. You see, darkness cannot affect the light. And so that's why the scriptures say that we are light, we're God's children, and God is light. So we are light. And in the gospel, Jesus even says, for ye are gods. So if we are gods, and supposedly Jesus said that, then that's what we are. And we truly are. And if you don't know that, then you don't know yourself. You think you're a little body, and you're trapped in this little conditioned, limited body. Well, there's the unlimited side of us, and this is what Matt is trying to evoke, trying to awaken in people through powerful, true knowledge. Not theories, true knowledge. I don't deal in theories and beliefs. I deal in direct knowledge. And I always offer an illustration. If you go around telling everybody that your friend Bob's car is blue, and you don't know that Bob's colorblind, but you trust Bob because he talks to you every day and everything he says is the truth, but you just don't know he's colorblind, and he tells you that his car's blue, and you go around inadvertently lying by telling everybody that Bob's car's blue. Well, you failed to open Bob's garage to have direct knowledge by direct sight to see the true colour of the car. You trusted a colourblind man, and in fact his car's red. But what's happened is that you have inadvertently become a liar because you are spreading second-hand knowledge, and you haven't bothered to go to the sources. See, to make a good film like Frankenskies, you have to go to some sources. You don't go to, people who are theorising and who are promoters and agents of that agenda. You do your investigative journalism, you do your due diligence, and hands-on and eyes open, and you go in researching with your own intelligence thoroughly. So would you like to speak to that, Matt? That's very, very important for all the listeners.
Yes, happily. I think some of the most important aspects of, and not to mention Bob, he's colorblind, but he's a good person, right? He had no intentions of lying. He didn't even know he was colorblind, maybe. That's the thing. So people there's a quote which, I go back and forth with this quote, but it is, the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And so many people ask me, well, why would they spray themselves, and who is in on this and all this? And I do deep meditation on that, and I came up with these 3 terms. It's compartmentalization, indoctrination, and need-to-know basis. It actually goes indoctrination, compartmentalization, need-to-know basis. But these people think they're doing something good, long story short, right? And it's because they didn't even know Bob was colorblind. They know they trust Bob, right? So it gets involved, and really it's up to us to not believe what the news says or what I say, right? It's up to us to cultivate those street smarts, those intuitions, and really see it for ourselves, because the biggest thing I've learned in all of this is that I hardly know anything, and that I'm a sponge and I'm here to learn more. The more I learn, the less I know. It is so, so real. And the more I open myself up to further truths, the more these truths that seem out of this world unbelievable become reality. We are here to honor the truth and bring it forward like a flame to the next generation, to literally save the world or something. Like, it's a big deal what's going on here. We're not this tiny little nothing insignificant thing. Like, we are all very, very important. And like you said about the exponential ability of it all, when spirit is at play, it's unreal. You think that you're just handing someone a flyer or something like that, but then that person goes on to be Malcolm X just because you talked to him that day. You know what I mean? But you don't even know. You don't even know. But it's your good intentions and your truth and your power and your frequency being put into things that can really empower and invigorate and inspire other people, right? And another thing about these truths, whether it be chemtrails, fluoride, GMO, 5G, is, I mentioned it earlier, the infamous they, like to complicate the details, making it harder for us to wrap our heads around, and then we just hand it on to the experts. Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, coined the term essentially through marketing of tobacco and what have you, and doctors and fluoride and whatnot. He coined the term, trust the specialist, meaning give your powers away, right? Because you don't know anything. You're not a specialist. Leave it to the aeronautical engineers and the what have you, right? But no, trusting the experts has given our power to all these people. We hand our children over to doctors just because they have on white suits to inject them with formaldehyde, someone else's DNA, mercury, aluminum, all this toxic combo of stuff, and nobody asks any questions because we've been told not to, right? Already we're giving it away because we're just accepting the authority. I like this quote, you can either accept truth as the authority or authority as the truth, right? Accepting authority as the truth or truth as the authority. Personally, I honor that truth. And I find so much simplicity in all of it. So many people, oh, you're against GMO foods and all this. And I'm like, well, let's really break it down. You know, I don't like the complication of it all. I don't even like the abbreviation, genetically modified organisms. So many people don't even know what that means. Let's keep it simple, all right? I went through all this education. I got all these student loans that I'll never pay, right? But when I got my master's degree, when I walked out of there finally, I was like, man, the KISS principle, I will keep that KISS principle, KISS. I will live that. It seems like it's something I can walk away with after going through all this indoctrination or whatever. The KISS principle is this. It stands for keep it simple, stupid. And when it's not kept simple, it's easy to pass away the authority so someone else can tell you what the truth is. But in the instance of GMO, I like to tell people really simply, especially the youth. And the thing is, we really owe it to the youth to pass on the truth because those are the ones under attack, all right? The family unit was broken up with the TV. The mom was taken out of the situation. The television replaced the mother. Well, now the child has an iPad in their lap, and it's just further disrupted this family unit, which really should be in place for some time, but now like 5-year-olds have an iPad in their lap, it's getting really weird. But on that note, okay, genetically modified food. I like to tell children, well, do you know why it's genetically modified? It's modified so that it can be sprayed with poison. Otherwise, that plant would die. So the plant gets this poison called Roundup, a.k.a. glyphosate, which should be illegal because all these court cases say it gives you cancer. People are being awarded $20 million because they get cancer from this thing, yet it's getting sprayed on produce still. That's the world we live in. I don't even know how that makes sense. But either way, keeping it simple, right? For the vaccine thing, people get really defensive. It's so hard to get to anybody. You know what I like to say? Well, if I was going to vaccinate a child, I would wait until after 18 months because that's when the child develops a blood-brain barrier. Before the age of 18 months, there's no blood-brain barrier, and all of the chemicals, nanotoxins, formaldehyde, what have you, right? It goes right into the brain without having this protective barrier. And then you empower the parent to start to think for themselves. Well, then why does the CDC recommend that I get this toxic combination of what have you before 18 months? Well, I don't know that, but maybe if you think about it for yourself, you'll come to other conclusions, right? Same thing with the chemtrails. I just like to say, look up, wake up. Like, just start looking at your skies. You're out and about and what have you. So the 5G, though, I literally had to go to the library, brother, right? When I found out there was protective fabric, I booked a flight to Asia, and I went out with this copper fabric at the time, and I started in Bangkok, and it was a shit show, man. It was unreal. What a memory. It was about a year and a half ago, and I'm going around Bangkok with this Pa Tor Dai Tong Dang, which means fabric made out of copper. And I'm going to these, I must have said that word 1,000 times, Pa Tor Dai Tong Dang, until I realized that Thailand definitely does not have any of this Pa Tor Dai Tong Dang. They were grabbing the fabric, every single person, Tong Dang, which means copper, right? So then I went to China and I realized that this fabric was only coming from China, Korea, and Japan. But it did exist, right? But I dove right in. But for me to really learn it at first, I went to the library, brother, because the disinformation and confusion was so deep. 5G, 6G, 7G, 10G, all these different things. Like, what does the G even stand for? What is it? What does it mean? Why is it bad? And I wanted to be able to break it down to people, but there's so much disinfo and confusion. And if you really know about propaganda and psyops and the degree to which we are socially conditioned and engineered, almost anything that I see that goes viral nowadays, I start to look around and ask my gut. You know how my gut got cultivated? And this is actually kind of silly and sad. When I was 15, my mom was crying about money because my dad had left and I was powerless. But we did get the Washington Post. I grew up in Washington, D.C. And we got the Washington Post. It had a business section. And at 15, I was like, well, I'll trade stocks. And I did make a little bit of money, and I lost a lot of money. But between the age of 15 and 39, I'm 39, I've had some sort of involvement in the stock market, even if it's just helping my friends and whatnot. And every weekday, every morning, I ask my gut, did I lose my ass? What happened, right? And for some period of my time when I was really obsessed with it, I was feeling it so deeply, and I really cultivated this yes, no in my gut. I really did through the stock market. I don't know, it's just my path. But now I ask my gut about everything. Every news article, every person I meet, everything. I ask my gut, what do I think about this? And so many things that go viral make me cringe nowadays because they're psychological operations to confuse the public. I mean, if you look at Operation Mockingbird that came out right after JFK assassination, you realize that there's so much hijacking going on and confusion and misinformation, disinformation, especially this 5G. So the 5G, I went to the library, and in one day of books, I learned that it's actually really simple, and I like to keep it simple, stupid, so I'll share it with everyone, really what I learned about 5G. So everything that we have that's smart tech that is transmuting data wirelessly is on radio waves. Everything from baby monitors to Wi-Fi to smart meters to smart TVs to smartphones, 5G, 4G, 3G, everything, radio waves, AM and FM, everything is radio waves, okay? It's all just a different size of radio wave. And when I say size, I mean the distance from peak, because these are waves. So from peak to peak, it's measured. And these radio waves are invisible and go through everything. And the fact that they're invisible is the biggest confusion thing for us, because if we could see it, we wouldn't be surrounding ourselves with it, because we would see it accumulating in our body and all this stuff, but we don't see it, right? It's just outside our visual perspective. And it's just because of the size of our eyes, really. So all of this stuff is light. Okay, radio waves is light. Light that we can see is light. It's all just got a slightly different property based on whether we can see it or not. So light travels at 186,000 miles per second. These radio waves travel the same speed. So does this light. So all the light that we can see is Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. And that's the color spectrum based on the curvature of our eye, of the light that comes in, and we see the rainbow. And that's the light that we can see. But there's also ultraviolet, and there's also infrared just on the periphery of these color spectrums. So if you've got orange light, slightly larger wavelength, meaning bigger waves, meaning a little bigger distance from peak to peak of these waves, right? It's kind of hard to describe, but imagine these waves going, and then from peak to peak, the peaks are getting further apart. So slightly longer waves, slightly larger waves than orange is red, and slightly larger than red is infrared. Well, we can't see it, but infrared's all around us, and it's just because it's a little larger. And then on the other side of the spectrum, slightly smaller wave than purple is violet, and slightly smaller than violet is ultraviolet. We can't see ultraviolet, but it actually is small enough that the size, the characteristics of it absorbs into our skin, absorbs into our eyes. We get sunburned, it impacts us, but it's invisible to the naked eye. All right, so I'm just going to explain why 5G is bad, what 5G is. So the entire radio wave spectrum, how we carry data wirelessly, is the radio wave spectrum. And it ranges from 1,000 feet in wavelength to 1 millimeter. The whole spectrum of it, from biggest to smallest, what we carry our data on. And the 1,000-foot wave is AM, all right? And I like to envision AM radio towers on that mountainside, wherever, as a big sun, because if we could see it, it would be like that. It's like light just shining really bright. And the further you get away from it, the less bright it is, but it travels great distance because we can tune into AM just about anywhere. And those 1,000-foot radio waves that carry AM information, they go through humans, cars, buildings. They travel great distances because they're huge. And those 1,000-foot waves go far. FM waves are 10 feet in size. And then as you get smaller and smaller, Wi-Fi, it modulates and changes in size. It's around 30 centimeters, right? And the absolute smallest wave is a 1 millimeter size. So a penny is 1.5 millimeters thick. So smaller than the width of a penny is the size of the wave, again, the distance between the peaks of these waves. It makes it a microwave. And this 5G is that size. It's 1 millimeter. But the problem with something this size, now Wi-Fi at 30 centimeters, it can still go through stuff, go through walls, go through bricks, go through humans. But once you get down to this tiny, tiny 1 millimeter size wave, which is used in body scanner technologies because it absorbs into your skin, and they can see if you've got like a razor blade attached to you or anything. When you go through the airport, you can see it says 1 millimeter wave on the side of the body scanner. And it's actually created because it was used as a frequency fence. It's called the Active Denial System, ADS, in the Middle East when the United States first went into Afghanistan and Iraq. This frequency fence, it's like a Hummer, and it looks like it has a cell tower on it, but they tune the 1 millimeter wave so that it absorbs and hits just your nerves in your skin. And then it burns your skin, and they can create a frequency fence that's invisible. Well, that exact tech is what 5G is, except for they tune it to absorb just below your nerves. Otherwise, we'd just be getting burned by all of it, and, it wouldn't be too cool for the telecom industries. But it absorbs. So long story short, 5G is bad because it absorbs, right? So that's how I like to keep it simple. Why does it absorb? Because it's such a small microwave, and our bodies and our cells are the size that if something that's a millimeter in size hits it, it actually absorbs. So because it absorbs, they need a small cell tower every 500 feet to shoot the signal around, because it absorbs into everything that it hits. So people are talking about 5G satellites launched by Elon Musk. That doesn't make any sense, because these 1 millimeter size carrier waves can only travel 500 feet. They absorb into raindrops and clouds and whatnot. I'm pretty sure that's complete disinformation, FYI. The concept of 6G or 10G or anything like that, that's all disinformation meant to disempower us from fighting 5G. Oh, if 6G is coming, why would I fight 5G? There's nothing that even makes sense that would be 6G. The carrier wave's not going to get any smaller. They can call something 6G, but it has nothing to do with the progression of the size of the wave of the technology. 5G is the end all of this radio wave spectrum. Nothing else is going to come after it, okay? So it's bad because it absorbs into what it hits, and then the radiation accumulates. And what's especially impactful, it is especially impactful on developing fetuses and children, because a developing fetus is really small in a woman's belly. So imagine you're a baby in your mommy's tummy developing, and you're 1 millimeter in size. Right? When you're 1 millimeter in size and you're being hit by an absorbing 1 millimeter size wave, you're going to be impacted. When you're older and you're developing eggs in your belly, because you're like a growing baby and your eggs are really small, these 1 millimeter size waves will severely impact your eggs. So what I see, this dystopian, unfortunate reality, is if they roll out 5G, the children that are born in that 5G environment, when they come to age, they will not be able to procreate. So it gets really weird and dark, but the most important thing is for us to honor the truth, keep it simple, do a little research, but be able to see through all the muck, because there's so much disinformation and confusion out there with this and that, but so much of it comes from fear. What I like to do first thing is I look at something, I say, is this fear-mongering? Does it come from a place of fear? And if it does, I say, well, that's in their best interest to promote this. You know, why is it going viral? On my Facebook, one last thing, and then I'll pass it to you. I've learned so much on my Facebook, having 48,000 followers on there, because I've gotten severely censored. If I post something that is fear-based, I've got an EMF meter. If you really want to learn about EMF, the radiation from all of this, it's called EMF. If you really want to learn about it, get a meter. It's so important and impactful. You start to see, oh, my phone's putting off this much, and if I walk over here, it's not there, or oh, my Wi-Fi router, I should just unplug my Wi-Fi, or get an Ethernet cord or what have you. You can get a meter online for $20, and it changes your life because it shows you this invisible radiation that's all around you that you cannot see, right? I lost where I was going with that. So if you get a meter, so I got an Xbox, and I plugged it in, and without turning it on, the radiation went through the roof on my EMF meter. It went off the charts. And I posted it on Facebook, but in fear, because I was testing the waters. And I said, Xbox is a weapon. It went viral. It had 600,000 views in 1 or 2 days, all right? Anything that I put on Facebook now that's hope, that's inspiring, it has like 5 likes, you know? And no one sees the hope, inspiring, empowering stuff. It's very much censored. But believe me, if it's fear-based, they love it, because when you're in fear, you're frozen, you're disempowered, you're definitely not going to spread the truth and be so empowered that you go out and make a change, right? It's all about the frequency control in masses, because there's so many people that are on the verge of, quote, waking up, and the powers that be want to quell all of it through frequency control, in my opinion.
Yep, for sure, brother. I agree 100%. Frequencies, since the days of, well, military using radio and stuff at the turn of the century, they've been doing it. They've been doing it all over the world. And that's what the grid's for. And my research took me to realise that people who are suffering any kind of disorder, whether it's mental or physical, some people are obese, some people are anorexic, Others don't want to eat. Others are bulimic. All of this is due to frequencies. The frequencies set up those conditions. It's not just the frequencies. They use a lot of other things as well, but the frequencies are there to perpetuate. It's a symbiotic thing where other things are in place, like vaccines, which destroys the natural bacteria and biology. Hence, and then other parasites and fungus infests the body. So things like that with the frequencies. I've seen this especially in country Victoria where I grew up, Matt. I saw how they ruined many of my cousins. Some of them are in, one ended up in a mental institution, and he was hearing voices, and he knew he was chipped, my cousin Robert, and he knew he was chipped, and he was. And he used to hear voices, and sometimes they'd make him want to kill people on the street. And so that's how they destroy families. His brother, he also is on drugs. They come every week and drug him, and he just goes really quiet for days after he gets drugged, and the mother just has to watch this. The government's just stepped in and treated them like babies. But I've seen what they've done to my family with these frequencies. There's all kinds of disorders. I've got the itch. One of my sisters has been for decades overweight, really, really overweight, and just can't lose her weight, whatever she does. And there's a few other things. I mean, I won't go into it, but I've seen how many of my families, because of being out in isolated country towns, have been targeted, and they're all in different ways, and that's how they do it. Different frequencies. Some will do voice to skull, others will give you itching, others will make you obese, others will make you skinny, depressed, suicidal, and then the doctors are there with all of their programmed medications ready for these weird and inexplicable symptoms that people are having, but they medicate them just generally with all their new tricks from Big Pharma. And so the military-industrial complex of, first of all, poisoning people with military vaccinations and military chemtrails, and then their military hospitals, of course. The hospitals run like a military. That's why they have a Surgeon General. Why would you have a general in a hospital? It makes no sense. That's why you have to be admitted and discharged when you go in and out of hospitals, etc. There's many, and wards, because you're a ward of the state. So it's all about the military working everything. They work Hollywood, they work the lot to dumb people down, and the doctors as well go along with the program. So what's happening is doctors are seeing people with all kinds of symptoms. Little children, they have ADDT or whatever they call it, and they give them a Prozac or something like that to numb them and keep them limited. Well, I see this as an attack against humanity by very demonic forces, and they are afraid of the light that we possess to be developed and to shine as it should in the world, because we are so beautiful and intelligent, and we have so much light and love in our hearts, and we are the most amazing creation. We come from the highest source, even above angels and archangels. We go right to the top. We're right from source. And so these entities who are not, have stepped in and are stealing our light. They are sabotaging our ascension process. But not on my watch, Matt, and I'm sure not on your watch. So really, really glad to be hooking up and talking about these things. Would you like to talk to that, please?
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. And I firmly agree with everything you said. I think that it's just the path that we're on, that this darkness is actually an amazing opportunity, because when you start to really comprehend frequency, I like to go back to the works of Royal Raymond Rife and Nikola Tesla Masaru Emoto. I mean, if you see the attack that we're under, especially the children, and you start to really ask why there would be such a concerted effort over decades and centuries to suppress our evolution in a spiritual direction. I mean, Joseph Goebbels, he must have been onto something by changing the music together from 432 hertz A to 440 hertz A so that we don't have music that resonates with us enough to, you know, cause a heart opening or an elevation of consciousness experience, because when people really connect to their spirituality, they realize their infinite potential and that they're not afraid of death. You know, that's really what it comes down to. People are so afraid of life and death through the programming that they're pretty frozen in it all. But when you do see that everything is frequency, and those that were in the know were shunned and jailed and prevented from sharing their information, you talk about different frequencies of suicide and this and that and everything. It's all really very real. Royal Raymond Rife, he showed that everything is frequency. Every ailment has an antithesis frequency that can even it out. It's all about snapping out of that frequency, and sometimes it's really hard. That's one thing I like about traveling a lot. I see these little bubbles that you come into and out of, and especially when you leave, you get a different perspective, and you can see the way you were thinking and the way the frequency was in some bubble of a different area, what have you, because certain areas are under some sort of, I don't want to use the word control, but influence. And when you really start to see our potential, you see why it's so important to not just honor the truth, but to spread it, proliferate it, and protect it. I want to take this as an opportunity just to talk about my clothing line. So after I went to Asia, I ended up with silver material. I thought it was going to be copper at first, but the copper doesn't really weave very well and protect as well as it could. It needs to be, long story short, the copper-plated fabric needs to be grounded, so we can't really have a grounding wire connected to our T-shirts and our hats and what have you. But I did end up with this silver material that most of it is this micro-sized nylon dipped in silver, making these silver threads that are woven into a silver fabric. So everything that touches your skin that the fabric is, it's 100% silver. And because of the properties, it doesn't need to be grounded, but it's actually big business in China. It's actually amazing to see the proliferation of knowledge over in Japan also, and Korea. And over there, they don't use the word EMF. This must have been coined by the telecom industry to further confuse people from knowing that it's actually radiation. But after the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown, the scientific community especially started to learn that non-ionizing radiation. So there's two types of radiation, ionizing and non-ionizing. And basically it means heating or non-heating. And the world thought that if the radiation didn't heat, it wasn't causing problems. Until Chernobyl, because people living around Chernobyl end up with 3 heads or whatever, and they realize, oh, there's definitely radiation that's cumulative and impactful that you can't feel, right? This was in the 70s. So after that, the EPA and the WHO and everybody got on board saying non-thermal, non-ionizing radiation is cumulative and carcinogenic and whatnot. But still, we're in the dark about it, and we don't see the problems leading to birth defects, and women with smartphones in their bra end up with tumors at a right angle right where the smartphone is, and the telecom agencies have a bigger budget than Big Pharma. Of course they're able to get away with this and sneak these devices into our homes. But the simple knowledge is so important. Please, if you don't know about blue light filters, just look at a little article on blue light, on what it is. Our devices emit this blue light, and we can change the tone of the light on our devices, but if we don't, it throws off our circadian rhythm. The blue light is so intense that it tells our bodies that we're in UV light, that is sunlight, and our bodies think that it's noon all the time. So effectively it's like this. We have a circadian clock, a very sensitive biological clock. It's tied to our endocrine hormonal system, and it really dictates everything. And at certain parts of the day, our bodies create different things like dopamine precursors, serotonin, melatonin, but only at certain parts of the day. We are very much beings of frequency. The sun goes up, the sun goes down, and our body knows. If you don't think you're being a frequency, try not to succumb to your rhythm. Don't sleep for 1 week and see how you feel. We are beings of rhythm, of frequency, and I actually believe that the sun going up and the sun going down and all this progression of sunlight, the orange light in the morning, the orange light in the night, and the different moon phases, going through the different moon phases, different points in the sky, all of this light actually triggers our light body and triggers our progression and elevation of consciousness, and that's why our sunsets were hijacked so much by chemtrails. Everyone's always asking, why do they chemtrail the sunsets so much? Are they trying to block Nibiru, Planet X, or whatever? What is it? I don't know exactly, but I do think that there's some power. If you learn about sun gazing and whatnot, there's a lot of power in that orange light. And this disruption of the frequency. Imagine the frequency, and look at it like music or something. Okay, and you've got the sun coming up and going through its progression, the moon going up and down, and the moon phases, and the sun has phases. All of that in concert is this incredible frequency that gives us our download codes and puts us on our crash course destiny with ascension. But if it's disrupted at certain key moments, at certain full moons and certain sunsets and sunrises and whatnot, it gives this evil, satanic, transhuman agenda. It buys them time to trick us into becoming robots, essentially, long story short. But once we recognize how important frequency is, we can see that we're beings of rhythm, and our bodies need to know the time of day that it is, and learning about blue light, especially with children, is so important. So you can get a blue light filter, and when the sun goes down, the tone of the tint of the light coming off your device changes. So it's like this. If you're in bed and it's 11 p.m., and you're staring at your smartphone or your smart TV or your iPad or your Kindle or whatever it is, and it's blasting that normal blue light, you're telling your body, your brain and everything, you're telling your entire system that it's noon. So then, even if you go to sleep and you sleep during the night at 3 a.m. when your body wants to produce serotonin or melatonin or whatever these chemicals are that produce at this exact 3:05 a.m., it won't produce them because the clock has been thrown off. It has gotten reset to noon at that time that you were blasting yourself with this bright light. So there's a research study coming out of the National Institute of Health. I encourage people to really sink their teeth into this one. Electrical workers installing 5G, 4G, panels, cell tower panels. These utility workers were installing these panels, and there was a statistically abnormal high rate of suicide amongst these workers. So the National Institute of Health, they did a research study on suicide rates among utility workers, and they did a nested case study, a random case study, and over 10% of these utility workers they were following committed suicide. Not were depressed, but got so depressed they committed suicide. And they determined that these workers their circadian clocks were so thrown off. They were being blasted by so much EMF radiation, which is light that we can't see, that their bodies were being thrown off. So at 7 a.m. they're working on the cell tower, and even 7 p.m. they're working on the cell tower, and throughout the day, whenever they're working near these cell towers, their clocks are being so thrown off and reset essentially to noon because the invisible light is so bright. So just like that, blue light, if you can get blue light, you can understand why EMF is bad for you and children and stuff, even just in this circadian rhythm, biological clock cycle. So it's really important to learn about grounding. Grounding, you can reset your clock and get it situated. Get a blue light filter on your phone. Learn about airplane mode on your phone. Unplug your Wi-Fi at night. Learn how these things disrupt your sleep, disrupt your circadian rhythm. You can even put your smartphone on data saving mode or whatever, and then it's not blasting as much radiation. But if you have an EMF meter, you can really learn about it. I've gone backwards in technology in almost all my devices, and they hardly emit any EMF radiation anymore. But the iPhone 10 Plus or whatever it emits 10 times the radiation of any of its peers, you know. And I've got these cell phone pouches. They're like our Faraday bags that you can just slip the phone in, that are lined with silver, that kill the phone for while you're sleeping and whatnot. Everything that I have is lined with silver for my company, Spero, S-P-E-R-O, which is a Latin word, Italian word, in Spanish for hope, because there's so much fear surrounding 5G and so much fear in the world right now that I just wanted to make the brand titled Hope, Spero. So please check it out, Spero, S-P-E-R-O, protectionclothing.com, SperoProtectionClothing.com. You can check out the hats, and I've got maternity aprons that are really popular overseas to protect pregnant women while they're pregnant with the silver lining. And the catchphrase is, wherever there's hope, there's always a silver lining, because, you know, Spero is Latin for hope. But on that path of truth, we've got the blue light filters. We've got learning about different things emitting, you know, as much as it is. And these simple little truths can go a long way. You start to look at the ingredients in your toothpaste, or look at the ingredients in your deodorant. Empower yourself with learning about mineralization. When people ask me about chemtrails, what can we do? What can we do? And then when they start to learn the connection to EMF fields break down your blood-brain barrier. A Navy research study showed how it completely obliterated the blood-brain barrier of rats. Low EMF fields did. And then things like aluminum, whatnot have you, can go right into your brain. So protecting your blood-brain barrier by knowing that EMF disrupts it and seeing the links to the chemtrails and what have you, it's really important. But when people ask me, what can we do? And whenever I give presentations about chemtrails, which I just gave a keynote presentation at the Live Aware conference in San Francisco last month, I love to end it with hope. I tell people about mineralization, about being up to speed on your minerals, and how so many of us are mineral deficient. Not everyone knows this little tidbit. 1 molecule of sugar, when you ingest 1 molecule of sugar, your body needs 54 molecules of magnesium to process 1 molecule of sugar. So a lot of us are deficient in magnesium, and magnesium is so important as this building block that activates so much and does so much. But we can get magnesium from mineral supplements or topical, or magnesium is the central atom in the chlorophyll molecule. So getting your leafy greens, getting up to speed on your chlorophyll, learning about that, learning about chelation, whether it's spirulina or activated charcoal or diatomaceous earth or chlorella or zeolite. There's so many different things that you can learn about just pulling these, or cilantro, pulling these heavy metals out of your body, which empower. But what I especially like to pass on is mineralization. If you are up to speed on your minerals, then you're not absorbing toxic things from the environment. For instance, if our bones are super deficient in calcium or what have you, and we're getting sprayed with radioactive strontium and it's in our air, your body will absorb the radioactive strontium into your bones because your body thinks that maybe it's something good for you, right? And then you've got this poison in your body. But if you are up to speed on your minerals, if you are mineralized, then your body's not looking for all of it from the toxic environment and absorbing things that are actually bad for you. So if you get a mineral supplement that's plant-based, that's basically like an ancient forest that's decomposed from in Utah or something like that, you can get these mineral supplements that have all these different minerals on them. Mind you, the produce that we buy nowadays, it is not mineral rich because the soil is not mineral rich as it was for our ancestors and their ancestors. Essentially, it takes 3 things to grow plants nowadays: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. But aside from that, we need so much more. Noble elements such as palladium, gold, and silver, even aluminum, barium, and strontium, but plant-based. Okay, it's hard to wrap your head around this, but if we have all these things in our body that make us conductive because we're electrical beings of frequency, then we're up to speed and our bodies are protected by empowering ourselves with the truth and taking these small steps towards mineralizing. and then we're not absorbing things. It's really simple, and it goes such a long way, and it's empowering, but it's the opposite of fear when you get yourself into a place of empowerment. And then you can lead by example and get out in the real world and really look people in the eyes and have conversations and activate them through activism or flyers or whatever it is that really, gets you going. But I like to say, with truth, if you can knit for truth. Take what you've got, what you're passionate, what you can do, and apply it. It's just that simple. And your example will really, you never know how much you can impact others just by being yourself.
Wow. Hallelujah. And so, well, many places to go from there. One thing that came to mind is the blue light. Yes, I use the blue light filters. The reason why I do that is because also the blue frequency, folks, is a higher capacitance light, and it's been weaponized. So red is a low capacitance. You can't put many packets of information on those waves, whereas with blue, I think it's 4 times more the capacitance. And so light is interesting. It's an interesting phenomena. The smaller the wave, the more capacitance, because it's not a spatial thing. Whereas in time-space, anything that is big can carry more stuff. So with light, it's different. And they've weaponized it, folks. Make no mistake about it. Remember when Blu-ray was coming out, and blue this and blue that and Bluetooth? The reason being is because you can put more information on it, just like a blue laser is way more powerful than a red. So that's the other thing that you need to be careful with. You see, these frequencies have extra packets of information on them, and so they're great for you for mind control. That's another reason why you want to filter it out, folks. Do you know about Dr. Jack Cruz?
Oh, yes, I do know about Cruz, and I wanted to, and he does a lot of work with the 5G and the blue light and all that, which is very important. Also, when you mentioned Bluetooth headphones, I've got to say, people, these AirPods, everyone with the AirPods, and if you even have a brother or a sister or a cousin or a mom or a dad or a friend or a coworker, let me just simplify this AirPod thing. The AirPods, they communicate with each other through your brain, people, okay? I like to keep things really simple. I could talk all day about Bluetooth being bad and what have you, but do you want these little smart devices communicating with each other through your brain? I don't think so, okay? It's very important to realize that. And also, blue light, it absorbs just beyond your retina. It absorbs in a different part of your eye than regular light. And Harvard research studies say and show and have proven that a child with about 20 years of blue light exposure will have macular degeneration leading to blindness. So too much blue light will cause blindness because of the place in the eye where the blue light absorbs. So an interesting takeaway there.
Yep. So nothing against the colour blue, nor the frequency of that in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's just that it has been weaponized because it's at the top end of capacitance, where violet would be the highest capacitance. And even though they do work with violet in their Saser technology, laser and Saser, it's not as effective as blue. It's just the frequency that is absolutely the best one to weaponize. And you can see that the higher capacitance of blue, when you look at your chakras, the red chakra at the bottom has 4 petals, and the blue chakra at the top of your torso has 16. So it's 4 times the amount as the red. And so this is one thing that we really need to be aware of, because the radiation that they're using is the kind in which they are able to weaponize it because of its nature, where they can put packets of information and piggyback them on top of a wave. So, for instance, they do this with music. There's sound waves in music, and what they do is they put little messages, subliminal, in the music, and they're just piggybacking on the main wave. You think you're seeing something, but your energy field actually absorbs all of the information that's on that wave. And they're very, very clever, these magicians. They know how high technology works, and they've known this all the time. They've just kept it away from us, from the public eye. But in the background, this knowledge has always been there. And this brings me back to the timeline jump that you were talking about at the start of the show, Matt. Yep, that's what they've done. It's a bit like Back to the Future. If you've got the machine, which I believe they may have. It's only a theory and an opinion, but the Ark of the Covenant, for instance, it's been speculated that it was like a time machine. And whoever has it, that's why it's gone missing. Whoever has it, those are the ones that have the power, because they can go back and forth like in Back to the Future, and they can adjust things to suit them. But they've only got a certain amount of they've only got a certain amount to play with. They can't do this forever. It's not unlimited. It's limited. So they're up to their tricks with this, whatever it is. I'm not saying that I believe that they have a machine, but it's plausible. Think about it. It's suggested in all the movies. Oh, if I can get my hands on that time machine, if only, right? So it is plausible, it's feasible, and it's viable. So those are very interesting thoughts, I think. Do you want to address that a bit about the timelines? Because I'm sure now this coronavirus and all the events surrounding it have really caught a lot of us by surprise. My son called me yesterday on Facebook. He's down in Melbourne, Australia. He's a music producer, producing hip-hop and rap. And he's usually very cool. He's a Libran. He doesn't really worry about a lot of stuff. And he called and he said, "Dad, what's going on, man? It's getting scary here. There are lockdowns. There's no supplies in the shops. Everybody's wearing masks. They're all acting strangely. And it's very concerning." So, yeah, I had the feeling that 2020 was going to be our year, and it will be. It still will be. But I just didn't expect this. I thought that these idiots who think they're in control would have already seen the writing on the wall that they're doomed and that they're going to fail, because no one likes them. They don't even like themselves. They hate themselves so much that they can't even come out in the open and and reveal themselves as much as they really would love to. They would love to know everyone to know that they are everyone's masters. They would just love that, but they can't. So would you like to talk a bit about that too?
For sure. I think that the darkness has gotten so overwhelming that so many people, even, I hate to say normal, but even people who have no reference point for the truth and what have you, they weren't like this during 9/11. A lot of people bought it. But right now, people can really smell the BS, and they're really wondering what is really going on. And all they really need is a nudge towards truth. I've been out in the real world, even though there's a lockdown. I've been talking to a lot of different people, and I plant my seed very gently. and everyone tends to agree that it smells fishy, that something is up, and they're not buying it. And the more that it shows itself, the more that we'll have that opportunity to learn from discernment and unplug from the TV and what have you. But really back to the blue light. So on the color spectrum, red light is actually healing. There's red light therapy. There's infrared saunas because, like you said, it doesn't have all that information. It's very gentle on our bodies, on our auric fields, on the way that we're set up. And then on the other side of that frequency, the blue light and the ultraviolet, too much ultraviolet light, you can burn your retinas, burn your skin, get skin cancer, you know? Just next to that ultraviolet is blue. It's essentially got very similar properties. So to simplify it just in that way, you know, it makes it really easy to comprehend. The timeline thing gets very interesting for me when I get really hypothetical on it. I can't help but think about World War II. Not so sure that the U.S. or whoever won that war. It looks like probably, you know, who won that war and then decided to flip his story and tell us a different thing and to keep the war covert and quiet. It's like when I learn how much I don't trust NASA, for instance, with a budget of $52 million per day and a chemtrail program to boot, right? And you start to look at the intentions of just this program that try to tell us that we're so insignificant, and you know they're discovering all. It's pretty subtle, but very manipulative, and very much not subtle. But when they're identifying other planets out there that we could live on, and millions and millions of light years away, and we're this little tiny speck, and and an asteroid might hit us tomorrow, it makes us feel so little and helpless. But when you look at Operation Paperclip and you look at the history of it all, thousands and thousands of war criminals, okay? They were escorted from Germany to create an MK Ultra program in the United States, to create NASA from its roots. War criminals, nefarious, evil people, thousands of them, you know, that alone starts to raise red flags in my consciousness, in my gut, and then you extrapolate it out to where we're at, and people are seemingly living a lie. And when you live a lie, you're not congruous with truth, the opposite of lies, right? And you're not empowered, and you don't know your true self and your true capabilities and all of this. But maybe the real push on the timeline adjustment, even though it was all being set up back then with the 432 to 440 hertz, Joseph Goebbels and the fluoridation of the water, and a lot of really smart stuff that seemed like it may have come from outside of humanity or something like that to really control humans and whatnot. But I think the big timeline push was 9/11, right? There's some interesting studies on out of MIT and all around the world of these randomness predictors, these machines that could predict randomness. And because of the collective consciousness in the world leading up to 9/11 and even the death of Princess Diana, but especially 9/11, these randomness machines that could predict randomness, they'd stopped working because the collective consciousness was so intense because of this atrocity that may not have been on our true timeline, you know? Because these evil scumbags really get together and think and extrapolate out for decades. And I do believe that they started with 9/11, and now this event can very much lead us into a very new world, a completely different place for humanity. And I think the biggest, what I'm witnessing, is the biggest thing is this distancing from one another. Yeah, we're on lockdown. Yeah, we might get, you know, forced vaccines and all this. That's very bad, you know. FEMA camps, very bad. All of these things are very bad. But when I went out to try to talk to my neighbor yesterday, and they were literally taking one step back for every one step forward that I made. I'm not sick. They're not sick. We're very healthy, happy human beings. Last week we were shaking hands and exchanging tools. I was giving them a shovel or a rake, and we were, back and forth like normal human beings. Now, this social distancing, manipulation, mind control tactics, it seems, very subtle, and keep your 6 feet away from every stranger, and maybe the people that are over 60 or 65 and the children, they may be hosts of a horrible disease that could kill everyone, and yeah, that's bad and all this. But this distancing thing is creating a whole new world. We are beings of community. We always have been. We're beings of touch. We're beings of intimacy. You know what I mean? And if that is taken away from us, what is the real agenda behind it? I can't help but really see transhumanism, this Elon Musk, who I do not trust one bit with his this Neuralink project that's looking to rear its ugly head in the next 1 or 2 years, his Mars trips and what have you. I've gone back to watching all of these different movies. I'm a film major, right, so I've watched almost everything. But I start to really look back at movies that are predictive programming. There was a 1990 film, Total Recall, and also 1990 film, The Handmaid's Tale. Both of these, I encourage, even if you've seen them already, go back and watch them again. Total Recall, the protagonist, he doesn't really go to Mars. He gets a chip in his head of a memory, a very elaborate, amazing memory, okay? A woman on Mars has 3 breasts, and he's the hero, right? He becomes the hero. But this was an implant in his head. So now we've got Neuralink, which is implants in your head, and a Mars trip, both being controlled by Elon Musk, which when I now look in his eyes, and I look into a lot of people's eyes nowadays, I've done actual shows titled The Power of the Flyer. And I know it seems simple, but having a flyer in your hand, I don't care if you're anti-fracking or if you love farming, or you want to tell people about companion planting, or whatever it is that you're passionate about, make a nice little flyer, and you would never believe the power of the flyer. Go to a farmer's market, start to look your peers, your community, look them in the eyes. Now everybody's all upset about this social distancing thing, so humanity could be changed forever. But literally get out into the world, look people in their eyes, and talk to them. And being the change changes the being, because I'm now on flyer 1 million. But after flyer number 50, I started to really feel it and to start to adjust who I wanted to really spend my energy with and who I'm talking to and what I'm doing. And now I send out stacks and stacks of flyers because I want to encourage and empower and inspire people to feel that power of the flyer. They're out there with the Frankenskies chemtrail flyer, but I encourage people to make your own flyer. Get out in the world. Let someone shame you. Let someone encourage you. Let someone befriend you and create an ally. I say farmers markets because there's a lot of amazing, cool people there, but you can go anywhere and do this. And when you start to look people in their eyes and see their souls and see their intentions, and then you see this new version of Mark Zuckerberg or this seemingly new version of Elon Musk, and you start to see this black nothingness in their eyes, and then you see this predictive programming, Arnold Schwarzenegger story of a man who never went to Mars but got chips in his head. It starts to look like, wait, wouldn't it be much easier for Elon Musk to create a whole transhuman reality by making it cool to go to Mars, but then they never really go. They just get a memory in their head, and they're really just sitting in a freaking room for 6 months, and then they come out to the world with these elaborate stories. And if you look at the National Geographic and these different publications that are all owned now, there's no trusted media anymore, right? That's the most important thing about people like yourself, brother, is we need you more now than ever, because we don't have our trusted local news anymore. The Economist and all these different magazines and publications, every local news agency, they're all reading a script. I'm so glad that we included that in Frankenskies when that got put together. But these scripts are handed to people globally, and they read it to influence your mind. Also, really quick, I want to remind people of binaural beats. If you don't know about binaural beats, you can really learn about mind control or what have you. You can dictate the frequency of your mind just by using headphones and having an imbalance in the frequency. So we want to put ourselves into a theta, which is a very mindful, like meditation kind of euphoric state. But there's also alpha and gamma in these different brainwave states. I really encourage people to research this. This is important information. When we were going through high school and whatnot, we didn't learn about farming or our anatomy or frequency or brainwave states, but we learned about all this nonsense that never got us anywhere, but we should have learned about this. So if you put on headphones that are binaural beats, and in one headphone it's 10 hertz, and in the other headphone it's 15 hertz, your brain will calculate the difference. Okay, which the difference there is 5 hertz, and it'll go into that 5 hertz space, which around 5 hertz is theta, and it's a relaxing point. But if you see how easily you can personally just put yourself into a different brainwave state, then you can start to think, wow, frequency is really easy, and I could be put into an agitated state by my smart meter or my Bluetooth headphones or what have you, and you start to really see the forest through the trees, like you said earlier, brother. But back to the timeline. Sorry, I remember these things and I got to get them out before it's over. Back to the timeline. I really think it's important to see where we could be going with this dystopia. In the 1990 movie Handmaid's Tale, no one is fertile all of a sudden. And the entire United States goes into this very weird evangelical place where fertility is currency. You've got to watch it if you haven't seen it, bro. I'll even send you the movie. And what happens is the U.S. flag has a line down the middle, and half of it is the U.S. flag, and half of it is an Illuminati triangle black with an eye on it. No joke, man. And the flag is like waving throughout the movie, and it's a complete and total dystopia. It's crazy. It's crazy dystopia, and it's bad. And the only thing that's worth anything are fertile women that can reproduce. And it is essentially what 20 years of 5G would do to us, in my opinion, if we're not protecting ourselves with Sparrow Apparel. Check it out, Sparrow Apparel, S-P-E-R-O, apparel.com. It'll take you to sparrowprotection.clothing.com. But either way, I think it's important to protect ourselves, or at least honor the truth with empowering ourselves with information about the radiation and cumulative exposure impacts and all these things, because these agencies and what have you are not looking out for us. The EPA, the FDA, the news, our local doctors. It's up to us now to look out for ourselves, our children, our family, our community, and to spread these truths the way we know and the way we see fit, even if it's one person at a time, because we can make a difference. Every person listening, I know you're told you can't. I know you're told through the indoctrination media that Superman or Batman or Spider-Man, this hero figure, is the only thing that could actually save the day. And when you're not identifying with that hero as yourself, you're like, oh man, well, I'll put it in the hands of Santos or someone else to be that hero. But guess what? You don't have to be that massive hero to light the match that is the change that saves the freaking world. You know, you just have to light that match and be that kindling for the fire that we all deserve so much, especially the children. You know, when people ask me, why do you fight so hard, Matt? I say the next generation. It's easy. You know, that's it. Because if the flame is not alive when the next generation is of age and ready to fight for it for themselves, then we haven't played our part, right? So I look to these dystopian films as some sort of guide and, you know, see where they're trying to take it. And I do my best to expose it. And when people are lining up to become transhuman, you know, I'll still be planting those subtle seeds that hopefully, you know, find that soil and that condition where the seeds and ideas can germinate. Because it's not up to me to sit around and fertilize every single person's seed. You know, I just plant it and move on, I hope. But long story short, yeah, I think that with 9/11 and then this and a lot of fear and the technology in place and then this upcoming 5G, and then they're going to want to put technology like in China that reads our temperatures to see if we've got a temperature walking down the street, and then these IDs and whatnot and all this. It's really up to us to dismantle it, but also in ways that we've never seen before, right? I don't like to predict the future because I see something coming out of this that's very spiritual and very amazing. I mean, we are co-creators, we are manifestors, and together, especially, we can change the world in ways that we could never, ever imagine. So drop the indoctrination, let go of this programming that we've all witnessed, and really rise above it in ways that our spirituality can really cultivate these things that we never knew could even exist.
Wow, thank you, Matt. Wow, so inspirational, brother. You've inspired me immensely, and hats off to you for your zeal and passion for the truth. I think of the scripture in 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted the seed, Apollos watered, but God has been making it grow. So, plant the seeds, folks. You just don't know. If you've got a patch of a ground where you grow food, you'll find that some patches are better than others, right? So you just don't know what chemicals are in the soil. You don't know what's in people's hearts. So plant those seeds, folks. Thanks, Matt. Look, so we're at the top of the hour now. I'd just like you to close off with how people can contact you and whatever else you want them to know about you and your work.
So when I first got going as an activist, some people reached out to me who I learned that I don't trust, and they said, Matt, keep it to one subject or no one will listen to you. And I was like, so what, just be only chemtrails? And they said, yeah, that's what you have to be. And then I was like, well, first off, I'm not going to be told how to do anything, but also you can't be half pregnant with the truth, Either you're pregnant or you're not. And honoring the truth with integrity doesn't mean just talking about chemtrails. So I developed this website, actualactivists.com, and there I've dumped so much truth from health to 5G to chemtrails to fluoride to the Starbucks logo, as much as I could possibly dump on there. Big brain dump, and I encourage people to send me more, and I'll put it up there. Please check it out, actualactivists.com. Please email me at Frankenskies at gmail.com. Please check out frankenskiesthemovie.com. Also, sparrowprotectionclothing.com. Again, SPERO, that's the Latin word for hope. Please check me out on YouTube, Matt Landman. Please, Matt Landman on Facebook. And don't be a stranger. I'm really open to having new friends, especially because we're all brothers in truth, and I love everyone. Thank you so much for having me on, brother.
Oh, thank you, Matt. All the best to you, brother, and keep on worrying and warrioring, that is, not worrying, and keep on in the fine battle fighting. Okay, friends, so thank you once again for joining. Please support the station because it's free. But also share the links with people, get them to join up, support People for People Radio, and this is our wonderful medium for getting the truth out. Once again, thank you, listeners. Stay tuned next week. I'll have someone else, I'm not sure.